In the village of Ejiro, nestled between rolling hills and lush forests, there was a church known as the Light of Zion. It was a beacon of hope for the community, a place where people came to seek solace, to pray, and to worship. The pastor, Pastor Chinedu, was loved by all. He was a man of great stature, both in the physical sense and in the eyes of the people. With a warm smile, a booming voice, and words that seemed to heal even the deepest wounds, Pastor Chinedu had gained the trust and admiration of the entire village. He preached about love, kindness, and living a pure life, and his sermons were filled with wisdom drawn from Scripture. Every Sunday, the church was packed, and the people marveled at his powerful prayers. They believed him to be a holy man, sent by God to guide them. But what they did not know, what no one could imagine, was that behind his pure facade, Pastor Chinedu was not the man he appeared to be. Beneath his robes, behind his gentle smile, a monster lurked. A wolf in sheep's clothing. At night, when the church was empty, the pastor's true nature emerged. The same hands that had laid blessings upon the heads of children and elders were now stained with sin. Pastor Chinedu had discovered the power of the church's influence and, over time, had begun to use it for his own desires. He would summon women to his office with promises of spiritual guidance, but in truth, he sought only to manipulate them. He would sleep with the vulnerable, preying on their trust and faith. No one suspected a thing, for he was the revered leader, the shepherd of the flock. The women, ashamed and afraid, were too embarrassed to speak out, too frightened to challenge the man who had led them into the arms of sin. But it didn't end there. Pastor Chinedu had bigger ambitions, darker ambitions. The money that flowed into the church, from tithes, offerings, and donations, was meant to help the poor, to build schools, and to feed the hungry. Instead, it lined his pockets. He used the church's funds to buy luxurious cars, pay for his lavish lifestyle, and build an empire of greed. Every month, the people would give generously, believing they were contributing to the Lord's work. They were none the wiser that their sacrifices were feeding the pastor's insatiable appetites for power and wealth. And then, there was the blood, the innocent lives taken for rituals to secure his power. Pastor Chinedu had formed a dark pact with those who practiced their cult. For a price, they promised him wealth, status, and protection from his enemies. In exchange, he would provide them with the lives of those who were most vulnerable, the children of the congregation. One night, under the cover of darkness, he would lead the unsuspecting into his study, where the air was thick with the stench of burning incense and strange chants. It was there, in the deepest secrecy, that Pastor Chinedu offered them to the gods he truly worshipped, those who demanded blood for their blessings. The pain of the church members who had been victimized by Pastor Chinedu was hidden behind their smiles. No one dared to speak, for fear of disgrace. The teenage girls, some no older than 15, had been lured by his promises of mentorship, only to find themselves trapped in his web of manipulation. One by one, they disappeared into the shadows, and when they returned, they were broken, their spirits shattered. Ngozi, a bright 17-year-old girl, had been the latest to fall under his control. She had been one of the most promising youths in the church, known for her enthusiasm and devotion. Pastor Chinedu had praised her in front of the congregation, but in private, he had drawn her into his clutches. Ngozi's once joyful face became a mask of sorrow, her bright eyes dimming with every passing day. In the quiet of the night, she would cry alone, knowing that the man who had once been a father figure to her was the very one who had destroyed her innocence. But the truth would not remain buried forever. Uche, a former church member who had witnessed one of the pastor's private acts, had left Ejiro years ago to seek a better life in the city. He had been a loyal servant, a trusted deacon, but the moment he had learned of Pastor Chinedu's dark side, he had fled in fear. The guilt of what he knew had eaten away at him, and he could no longer live with the shame of having been complicit in the pastor's sins. Uche returned to Ejiro with a burning desire to expose the truth. Armed with photographs, recordings, and testimonies from the victims, he went to the village elders. At first, they were in disbelief. How could the man they had trusted, the man they had revered, be capable of such darkness? But as the evidence mounted, their doubt turned to horror. They confronted Pastor Chinedu in front of the congregation, demanding the truth. The pastor, his usual calm demeanor replaced with a cold fury, tried to deny it. He claimed that these were lies, attacks from those jealous of his success. But the victims, the women, the teenagers, and the families who had lost loved ones, stepped forward. One by one, they shared their stories, their voices trembling with the weight of years of silence. In that moment, the true nature of the so-called shepherd was revealed. The villagers could no longer ignore the truth. The once revered Pastor Chinedu was not a holy man, he was a predator in disguise. The money he had stolen was returned to the community, and the church was purged of its corruption. But the damage was done. The faith of many was shattered. Some left the church, never to return, while others struggled to heal from the scars left by the man they had trusted with their lives. As for Pastor Chinedu, his reign of terror ended with his arrest. He was tried for his crimes, and though his punishment could never undo the harm he had caused, it served as a grim reminder that not all who claim to be shepherds are worthy of the flock's trust.